Welcome everyone to this conference titled English Language Inside a Multilingual Primary Education, Comparing Language Policies in Norway, China and Spain. My name is Alicia Chabert and I work at the University Jaume I in Castellón. And for the past few years I have been carrying out an international study focused on English language teaching in primary school in Norway, Spain and China. Let's see, next slide. In this conference, I will present part of my research on English language teaching in primary school in different international contexts. In particular, I will present how English has become part of the curriculum thanks to the Common European Framework, and we will analyze how Norway, Spain and China have adapted their curriculum to adapt English as a global language. We will observe differences between primary school guidelines in this context and their interpretation of English as an international language and plurilingualism. Due to globalization as well as historical and socio-economic factors, English has now taken the position of international language. Such is the case that English is now a compulsory subject in primary school, along art, math or social sciences, becoming a necessary skill rather than a language. For decades, English teaching has been characterized by the monolingual bias and a covert linguistic imperialism that links the English language to major English-speaking powers. However, the current guidelines aim to present English from a global perspective, at least in theory. By incorporating a global view of English and an ecological perspective in language teaching, multilingualism can be strengthened along with respecting the learner's mother tongue. This idea is part of the multilingual turn, and this movement has been a major shift in SLA. It was led by the Douglas Fir Group, which aims to reimagine language learning by considering the learner as a plurilingual individual rather than a monolingual trying to learn an additional language. Ideas of multilingualism and communicative approaches to English teaching are now very prevalent in most curriculums in the world. With multilingualism now spread worldwide, given that at the very least students need to learn English as well as their mother tongue, plurilingual perspectives to language are becoming more needed. However, at the moment languages keep being treated in isolation and communicative teaching is still seen as incompatible with plurilingualism. Unfortunately, while the ideas of multilingualism and communication might be clearly stated in the curriculums, their application in practice is still contradictory. This leads to the current language policies and guidelines followed in language learning. One of the most important current frameworks is the Common European Framework, also known as the CEFR, which started as just European guidelines but has now been adopted worldwide as a reference for new educational reforms. This framework promotes the use of the communicative approach and describes the native speaker as the proficiency ideal. Even though it encourages multilingualism, it refers to plurilingualism as language addition and the native speaker as the ideal model. In regards to English as a lingua franca, the CEFR makes little reference to it and keeps the native speaker at its core, promoting on the one hand plurilingualism and on the other perpetuating a monolingual bias. For example, despite referring to the plurilingual competence in the framework, in terms of the can-do statements to measure the learner's language competence, there is very acknowledgement, if any, of English as a lingua franca, and classifies native speakers not just as models, but as a unified way of speaking. This can be observed in statements such as this one, where it says, referring to the learner, can with much effort understand what is said around them, but finds it difficult to speak to native speakers who do not modify the way they speak. So we can see this is just one example, but we went through the whole of the Common European Framework and all of the references kept being towards native speakers and adapting to the native speakers, for them to understand us, and talking about native speakers as a unified front. So after this, we started analyzing the different contexts. We started in Norway, so we focused on the language policies, and reviewing the English curriculum for primary school, we found that Norway follows a real plurilingual approach in the English classroom. It also presents English as a global language for international communication. However, the specific guidelines refer to English countries and cultures where English is a primary or official language. In this slide, we added some direct quotes from the curriculum, and it can clearly be seen that English is considered a universal language, but that the subject will provide an insight into cultures where English is the primary or official language, creating some contradictions within this curriculum. When we analyzed the Norwegian guidelines, we also noticed that the structure and ideas were mainly based on the CFR. And when we compared it to the CFR, we observed that the curriculum is based on the can-do statements, and the competences listed range between A2 and B2. As we mentioned, it focuses on plurilingualism and English as an international language, but the specific goals are mainly based on specifically Great Britain and the US. Moving on to the English curriculum in Spain, the current education laws, known as the LOMCE in Spain, are based on the European Commission guidelines. However, Spain is an interesting case, given that it has national and regional guidelines that, even though they should be complementary, they result in contradictory recommendations, especially on the approach to plurilingualism. In any case, in all of the guidelines, English is presented as a global language, and in both regional and national curriculums, the communicative approach to language teaching is supported, along with plurilingualism, although with unclear instructions and applications. Here we can see some examples that appear in the national curriculum. It refers to plurilingualism from the point of view of adding foreign languages, ignoring the fact that Spain has several co-official languages. Also, in regards to English, it states that the mother tongue will only be used for support, not for learning. At the same time, it also proposes English as a global language, yet when we go to the specific content in the curriculum, it refers only to English-speaking Western countries and cultures. Not only are they clearly Western-only tradition, but they are mainly limited to Christianity. In terms of countries, it's more specified towards UK and the US. When it refers to cultures, and this is specified in the curriculum, it mentions Halloween from the US, Christmas, Bonfire Night in the UK, April Fool's Day in the US, Pancake Day from the UK. Even though Christian Anglo-American culture has not been imposed through colonial dominance, it clearly influences the curriculum. However, when we look at the curriculum in the Valencian region, we can see guidelines pointing out that a common methodological approach should be used so that there is a transference of competences among languages, contradicting the national curriculum that suggests that languages should be learned as separate entities, and that Spanish and co-official languages should only be used in the English classroom when support is needed. Moving on to our third context, China, their language education had for centuries a teacher-centered and memorization approach that was suddenly changed to a communicative one without being prepared for it. From the start of the 2000s, English was presented as a tool for modernization and opening to the West. This national reform resulted in important challenges for its implementation. On the one hand, due to the size of the country, the regions have different access to resources, quality of teachers, and their expectations differ. On the other hand, the new guidelines proclaim to be communicative, yet the instructions to follow inside the curriculum are more towards memorization approaches. As we can see here, we have some examples. It says perform 30 to 40 English songs. In the curriculum it said this had to be memorized. Read and recognize all words studied. Again, memorizing certain words from each unit. Copy example sentences. So this referred to the idea of just, copying to memorize. So what we did from here was to compare all of the curriculums that we analyzed and all of the laws and guidelines on this table. We compared 6th grade, because for the purpose of this study we had to focus on just 1 year. In this case it was 6th grade in the 3 countries, and we can see that the time spent learning English is similar, and that they refer to the inner circle countries despite using English as an international language, but their understanding of plurilingualism is quite different, as well as the level objectives that vary from A1 to B1 and even B2. So overall, we can observe that the age to start English in primary school may differ among the countries. All curriculums demonstrated that English was a necessity due to being a global language and that they used communicative approaches. However, the reality is that none of them present English as a lingua franca, and while plurilingualism appears to be a priority focus in the curriculum, it is still misunderstood. Our curriculum analysis was part of our main research and was used as a prior necessary study of the context, where we implemented different teaching approaches in the classroom and carried out several questionnaires. From this preliminary study, we concluded that despite the global status of English, there is not a clear global perspective in the classroom, which would be implemented through English as a lingua franca. It was also observed that the national guidelines are not always tailored to the needs of each of the contexts, as they appear to follow the common European framework regardless of the type of learner or teacher. And finally, it was very clear that plurilingualism is still misunderstood, and further research based on real classroom practice is required to be able to implement a real plurilingual approach to language learning and avoid monolingual perspectives. Thank you very much. I understand that it may feel like there are some gaps to the study, because this is just one part of a bigger study where we did some experiments and some questionnaires. So please feel free to send me any questions regarding this, and I'll be more than happy to answer. Thank you very much and have a lovely day. Bye.